ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. As global trade dynamics shift, Spain is actively seeking to strengthen its economic ties with China, positioning itself as a bridge between the European Union and the Asian powerhouse. Now, this move comes amid escalating trade tensions between the United States and China, with Spain advocating for a balanced and reciprocal relationship that aligns with EU principles. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss the evolving EU-China relationship is Dr. Małgorzata Bonikowska, president of the Warsaw-based Center for International Relations. As a respected voice on EU foreign policy, she brings us valuable insight into how Europe's internal dynamics shape its approach to Beijing. Hello, ma'am, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So before we kick things off, we do have a soundbite by the Spanish official, Pedro Sánchez, the Prime Minister, when it comes to this particular issue. So let's take a look at it first.
We believe that there are opportunities to deepen this bilateral relationship between Spain and China, and between China and the European Union. I think it is very important for China to be sensitive to a legitimate demand on the part of both Spain and Europe to have more balanced relations, and therefore not so balanced in favor of China's interests, which are legitimate, but which we believe can be much more balanced.
So with that being said, how do you think Spain's approach to China is going to influence the broader EU strategy towards Beijing down the line?
Well, it's a very complex situation the EU is in, because, of course, when you look just at the economy, we could have trade with everybody, and of course China could be a very good option, especially when America is hitting us with the tariffs. Suspended for 90 days, but maybe will continue. America is creating issues in trade, while Europe would love to have much deeper connection with the US, both in trade and investment. We were very much pushing for TTIP agreement. It was almost done, but during the first Donald Trump administration, Donald Trump closed it down, finished the negotiation, did not want this to happen. Today, it's much worse. So the EU could say, well, if not the US, then let's look elsewhere. We can have ASEAN countries, we can have China, we can have India, we can have Mercosur, like we have already finalized the free trade agreement. And it is a very reasonable thinking. The only problem we have in the EU is that it is not only about trade and investments. It's not only about economy, because Europe is really dependent on the US in the security domain. So countries like Poland and all the Eastern flank countries would be very careful in dealing now with the US. We don't want America to think that Europe is hitting the US. We want America to be our friend. We want America to be our ally, to work together with us. And of course, it is a very connected issue, the business with now security. So we know very well that we cannot just now turn to China and forget about this very important aspect of European-American relations, and especially countries like Poland. For Spain is very far from the eastern flank of NATO. So from their perspective, they don't even spend 2% of their GDP for defense, being a member of NATO. So obviously countries of the southern part of Europe, countries which are distant from the eastern flank, may think that this could be an easier move than it is definitely for countries of our region, of the East.
All right, so that makes a lot more sense why Spain is the one to be spearheading this operation. But at the same time, like you mentioned, the U.S. tariff and the uncertainty of the current U.S. administration is making Europe quite jittery when it comes to who they partner up with in terms of trade. Do you foresee a kind of a long-term plan when it comes to a European Union looking for its trading partner with all these kind of very uncertainty going on?
Well, we have to react on what is happening, because there's no way we can predict what Donald Trump will be doing in a week or in a day even. But we definitely know what are our priorities. Our priorities is to show to the US that Europe is a strong continent, that the European Union works, that it's not just a bunch of countries who are good for nothing. So we definitely want to demonstrate our strength to the Americans, but in the same time, we don't want to demonstrate our willingness to for a divorce. It's the opposite. We would like to convince the Americans that it's really a stupid move if they want just to disconnect from the EU or make a trade war with us. We can understand why Trump hits China, but we don't want really a trade war with the US because we think it really brings us nowhere, and it's not good for the US neither. So I think that's the strategy. From one side, show our strong cards and act as a responsible bloc of countries, which, by the way, in economic sense, are really strong. We can really hit badly in trade and tariffs because we operate in this sector as one country. We have a complete competence of the EU in this regard. But in the same time, we don't want to hit Americans. We don't want to have a war with them. We want to convince them that we have cards, but in their interest is not to go for war or to war with us.
Right. So you brought up a very important point where in the EU, it's very imperative for them to demonstrate to the Americans that it is a very united bloc, which is has a very strong economic backing as well. But ever since the announcement of this blanket tariff from the U.S. administration, we've seen various EU leaders coming to the negotiation table with Donald Trump and looking for ways to lift this tariff. Do you think that with all very different kind of diverse of interests and opinion within the European Union, some sort of consensus can come to term when it comes to forming a collective bloc in its negotiation?
Well, I think it is now really an attempt to talk to Trump directly and to his advisors. And as many European leaders as they can, they try to go to the US and talk, and that's good. But the condition is that we don't do anything out of the bloc, because, by the way, the trade policy and custom policy is not given to the state level, is the union level. So the governments of individual EU member states cannot really do anything without the others in the bloc. So I think I can understand that we should try to have this direct access to the US president to convince him. And here we have differences. You know, Giorgia Meloni, for example, is more welcome in the US than, for example, maybe German chancellor in Spain, or even Polish prime minister, we don't know, because of the differences of the government's position. But even President Macron, who is a liberal centrist politician, seems to have some impact on Donald Trump. So it's very personal as far as talking. But as far as policy making, I think our strategy is the only one possible. We have to stay in a bloc, no bilaterals. We should go together. Right. Same strategy as we demonstrated during Brexit, and it worked very well for the EU.
All right, thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you.
Cheers. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.